I'm Marcy Cohen. I'm going to talk today about the parent perspective of having a child with a disability. I have three children, as you can see, but I'm going to focus today on my youngest, my son Max, and talk to you a little bit about what it's like to be the parent of a child with a disability and my experience. Here's our agenda for today. It certainly doesn't encompass all that there is about being a parent of a child with a disability, but I think it touches on some of the highlights. Again, this is just my experience about being a parent of a child with a disability. It is not meant to speak for all parents, but it's my experience. And I think some of it, at least, is true for others that I've spoken to, but certainly it is not meant to say that this is the experience of all parents with disability, but I think it does have some commonalities to other parents. So, who am I, and why did Professor Burns ask me to come and speak to your class? I started my professional life as a rehabilitation counselor, and that is a counseling professional who focuses their work especially on the vocational life of people with disabilities. I worked in that profession for many years, helping people with disabilities to learn job skills and how to get a job. And I did that job pretty well. I worked with young adults in a program here in the Chicagoland area. And I thought I kind of had it together. I thought I was doing pretty well. I thought I understood um, people with disabilities and what was going on in their lives. And then I left that job to be a full-time mom, and I had a child who, from a very early age, as you'll see, had a disability. And what I end up learning is that I did not have it together. I did not know it all. And I was very much in the dark as a special needs mom. I I needed to learn a lot and quickly, and I did not have it together even a little bit in that area of my life, and I was very much in the dark and scared, and I didn't know what to do, and I was very frustrated, and I was not at all the confident person that I had been in my professional life working with people with disabilities. In this area of my life as a mother as of a person with a disability, I was panicked. So, some more about me. I earned my bachelor's and master's degree, both from Michigan State University. And then I came to Chicago as part of my internship for my master's degree. And I worked in a program for young adults with multiple learning disabilities. And Professor Burns was my boss for about 10 years. And I helped these students to make lists, to learn skills, to learn so many of the things that other people just come to know. I help them to learn routines, to learn what was appropriate to talk about and what was not appropriate to talk about, to learn what time to get up if they had to be at work at a certain time, where to put your lunch, what you talk about with your boss or your coworkers, what you don't talk about at work. Um, all of the things that make someone independent and successful at work. And when there was a problem, how to figure out what the problem was and how to solve it. And a lot of times it was very successful. Sometimes, unfortunately, it was not. And then you go back to the table and you sort of figure it out. And none of these things prepared me for being a special needs parent. I was really lost. I was really confused. I didn't know where to start. There were all of these people telling me all of this information, and it was very hard to take in for my own child. And as you'll see, it was very hard to advocate. And I'll explain a little bit more of why I had all these skills when I was working and I had so much trouble putting them into place for my own child. So the beginning is a little bit nebulous. Um, we we noticed things were off with Max right from the start. He had a hard time feeding. He was the drooliest baby ever. He would only rock. But we didn't really know that anything was out of the ordinary until you look at the top left picture. When we went on vacation with my husband's sister's family, who has a son about the same age as Max. And Max, it's very hard to see, but he's in the stroller in this picture. And her son is being held in this picture, and they're babies. They're about the same age. And we went on vacation together, and I noticed that her son was doing so many more things than Max was. He was talking more, he was walking more, all of these things. And when we got home from this trip, I called our pediatrician and I was very concerned that Max was not able to do so many of the things that my nephew was doing. And he suggested that I take Max for a speech evaluation at Lurie Children's Hospital. And I really didn't, he told me it would be fine. And I didn't think much of it. And I went when Max was about 18 months old to this evaluation at Lurie's. I went alone. My husband wasn't with me, just Max and I. And I went for this evaluation. It was a speech evaluation. And I was not prepared for what happened. We went in, me thinking they'd say, oh, he's fine. If it doesn't improve in about 6 months, then come back. And that was not what happened at all. We went there and all these different people kept coming into the room. It was a much longer evaluation than I had been expecting. And at the end, they told me that he needed speech therapy, he needed physical therapy, he needed occupational therapy, he needed developmental therapy, and he needed to start right away. And I was not prepared for that at all. And if you look at some of the other pictures in this slide, you'll see some of the things that maybe I just wasn't prepared to see, but the way that he played, he wouldn't really play with toys. He kind of lined them up or just watched them. Haircuts were a complete disaster. They were so difficult for him. This actual picture of a haircut he's receiving where two people are needed to give him a haircut is actually a picture that I took and sent to my husband, only half joking that I needed a Xanax because this haircut was so difficult. And the top right picture is Max during this period of about 2 or 3 weeks where he would just carry around this orange juice container all the time with him. And I just didn't know. I just wasn't putting together all of these things. And we had speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, developmental therapists, and none of them were saying to me, hey, this could be autism. They were just all saying, he's delayed, he'll catch up. And then when he was about 3 years old, after he had aged out of early intervention, I took him to an evaluation at the Erickson Institute in Chicago. And again, I was just trying to figure out what was going on. Was there something I was missing? I just didn't know what was going on. And at that evaluation, it was so difficult. He was crying so much of the time. They would do things like give him a toy and then take it away and see how he reacted. And I was like, he is going to react terribly. Why are you doing this? And after the evaluation, when my husband and I went back for the feedback session, this woman gives us this evaluation, this feedback, this paper, and she sort of happily told us that our son had autism in a way like she was doing us a favor. Like, here, now your insurance will have to pay for everything. This is so great. And I did not think it was great. I was devastated. I was not ready to hear this. It was something that was not something I had really thought about. And here this woman was telling me this information as if she was giving me a gift, and I did not see it as a gift at all. I saw it as something really detrimental to his future. And she was telling me, here's this present so that your insurance will just pay for things. And we were not on the same page at all. And to this day, I still think of that meeting as one of the most um, devastating moments of my life. Before we had an official diagnosis of autism and after, I spent so much time Googling and Googling and Googling, and I don't know exactly what I was looking for, but I think I was looking for some sort of magic something that I didn't want to miss. Like if I turned him around 3 times and I fed him a spoonful of prune juice, and if I did all these things, that things would be different. And if I missed it, then I would miss this opportunity to fix things. And I know it sounds insane, and it was insane, but I just didn't want to miss something I could have done. And it took me a long time to not feel that way. And especially after we had the official autism diagnosis, I really mourned for a long time who I thought my son would never be. And it took me such a long time to realize that my son is an incredible guy who's going to be who he is. And it may not be what I had thought he was going to be, but he's on his own path and he's doing his own thing, and what he is incredible, and it's just something I had not thought about or realized, and it took me so long to come to that realization, and not to mourn who I thought he was going to be and just let him be who he is. And we had all these people in our lives, these therapists, these occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, and each one of them would suggest things to do that could improve how he was living. And I, for a long time, spent so much time on our homework, saying different phrases to him. Ready. I remember for a long time we'd say ready, set, and wait for him to say go, or something like that. And I spent so much time trying to improve him that I didn't enjoy him or our family life as much as I think that I should have. And that I didn't realize that I was the expert in what made him amazing and what made our family amazing. And I was so focused on these perceived deficits that I wasn't focused enough at the time on what the strengths were and he what made him great. And if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be that. It would be to take more time to have fun and less time to try and fix everything. And I wish I could tell myself that you didn't have to work as hard as I thought that I did, that you can enjoy that you can enjoy yourself and you can enjoy your family. And there is a lot to enjoy. And just because there are goals to work on doesn't mean you have to work on them all the time. One thing that I learned along the way was that there is no prescription for the right way to do things. And as I've said, the best answer is not always the right answer. And someone can suggest something to you, and that does not mean that it is absolutely the best way to do something. And I'll give you an example. Early on, we had a physical therapist who said that Max had low muscle tone. And he would sit, I don't know if you know what this is, in a W, like he would sit with his legs backwards in a W sit. And she said that that was not the best way to do something, and he needed to work on his muscle tone. And she gave us this suit for him to wear that was kind of like a full body Spanx is the best way I can describe it. It's like a compression bodysuit. And he hated it. And getting him into this compression suit was torture for both of us. He would be crying, I would be crying. He hated wearing it. He was miserable the whole time he was wearing it. I was miserable watching him wearing it. And then finally, I just said, this is not worth it. We're not going to do this. This might be something that could help him, but it's not worth torturing both of us to do this. And it was really the first time with all the therapists that we had had in our house that I said, no, we're not going to do this. And he said, oh, okay, fine. And it was the first time I realized that I had the power to say no, and that that would be a full sentence. And since then, I've said no a lot, many, many times. But what I realized was this wasn't like when you went to the doctor and you had strep throat and you take antibiotics and it's gone and that is the treatment. That there was no one way to do things. And because there wasn't one singular way to do anything, that I had the power as his mother to decide what was going to work for our family. And some things were not going to work. And that compression suit certainly was not going to work for us. So sometimes he wasn't ready for some things. Sometimes what I wanted wasn't really what he was ready for. Max had a lot of feeding issues, and I really pushed feeding therapy because I wanted him to eat birthday cake at a birthday party and all of these things, but he wasn't ready for it. And eventually we stopped feeding therapy because it wasn't working. It was making him miserable. It it wasn't effective. And we just stopped doing it. And the stress level in our house went way down. And I had to really just put it on myself that that was something that I really wanted, that he wasn't ready for, that he didn't want. And later on, when he was older, he did want to try new foods. And once he was ready, it worked so much better. But before he was ready, it was a disaster. Um, so the best answer is not always the right answer. And I urge you in your professions, when you try something and that it is not working for that child or that family, that you don't keep pushing, because sometimes that is not what is needed. I think that this is probably one of the most important information pieces of information that I can provide. That our kids are not problems to be solved. They are not a series of goals. They are certainly not broken. And most importantly, they are not yours to judge. If you come into their lives for such a short amount of time and in a very specific context, but you don't always know the rest of the situation or what has happened years before or in a context that you don't know about. So there's a lot more to the story than you know what's going on. I guarantee that our kids are kids and they do not want to be working on goals 24/7. They are interesting and they are funny and they are also frustrating and demanding, much like other kids. They are our priority all the time. And sometimes, because of their challenges, it can mean that parents do things that other people don't quite understand. One example of that with my own son is because of his feeding challenges, he ate solely with an iPad um, almost all of the time. And that was the only way we could get him to eat. It was a bad habit, but one that worked for us and took us a long time to get out of. But if you understood where we were coming from and the challenges that we had, you would understand how we got into that situation and that we didn't deserve judgment for it. It was just how things played out from these very significant feeding challenges. Um, that's just one example where you could see one situation play out and really judge us for it, or you could take the time to talk to us and understand it. Where does the future lie? I really have no idea. When I was mourning all of these things that I thought my child would never do, I had no idea that he would do so many things, that he would turn into this interesting guy who loved fishing and who loved Legos and who loved Minecraft and who is turning into a coin collector. None of these things were on my radar when I was mourning that he would never be on a baseball team. He is still not on a baseball team, but he's on a Special Olympics basketball team and he's really enjoying that. So I didn't know what was going to come, but the things that have come are different than what I thought, but that doesn't make them any less wonderful. Um, so times are changing, and I don't know what the future holds for him. I don't know what he's going to do after high school, for example. But I'm willing to, stay on for the ride and see, and I'm much less terrified of the future because I've seen that things are progressing. He might not do it at the rate that other kids his age are doing things, but he's doing things in his own way and he's doing awesome. I've also found that as he gets older, he has a say in things, and that sometimes makes things more complicated and it sometimes makes things more interesting. I also know that transition is both a legal process and an actual process that takes time. And so playing out he's in eighth grade now. He's going to his first IEP meeting in a couple of weeks. He's very excited about it. He has a lot of things he wants to say. We're teaching him the rules of an IEP meeting and how they work. But for example, he does not want to go to extended school year, and he wants to make that very clear that he wants to go to camp in the summer and not extended school year. So we'll see how we can make all things work, but he has a say in things, and he wants to be a part of the process. I haven't talked at all about policy, but it does matter. And things like funding and who is in charge and um, what policies are enacted or funded or what research is is acted upon and what research is done do matter. And it is all very important that all of those things are done in a way that is ethical um, and I'm trying to use my words appropriately here, but that all of these things matter to our families and to our children, and that policy really matters.